All right, welcome everyone. My name is Brandy Shunk, and I am part of the communications team and a social media coordinator with Homeschoolers of Maine. And I am joined today by Darren Jones, and he is the Director of Group Services at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. A couple of acronyms to get you started. They might get thrown away around today during our interview. Is HOME is Homeschoolers of Maine, and HSLDA is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So today we're going to explore with Darren how homeschool groups, both the local and state organizations, can work together in serving homeschoolers. We will also explore how these partnerships can strengthen the groups themselves, while also serving to protect future homeschool freedoms here in Maine and in other states, if you're watching this from another state. So Darren, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here, Brandy.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure always. So to begin, Darren, would you tell us a little bit more about your role at HSLDA? What exactly is it that you do there?
I am one of the lawyers here. We have a number of lawyers on staff who have different functions, some who assist members in various states. I do that, for example, for members in Texas. Others who work in litigation, I do some of that, often dealing with the child support benefits or something like that. And then a lot of us have various side projects too. So for example, Mike Donnelly is over our international homeschooling programs, and I help groups. And that might be talking with state organization leaders, talking with co-ops, talking with entrepreneurs who want to start up a business to help homeschoolers. A lot of my job is doing either Zoom or phone calls, talking with people, brainstorming with them, helping them design policies, trying just to look at the group side of things.
That's awesome. And what can HSLDA Group Services provide? I know you kind of mentioned a little bit. Is there more that you'd like to expound on there?
Sure. All right. So one of the things that can be very handy is just talking with an attorney about some of the things that your group might be facing. For example, I often talk with groups about financial policies, making sure that your money is handled properly, giving some advice on that. Also talking with groups about if you are meeting together in a physical location, you need to have child protection policies. And in some states, for example, Pennsylvania and California, that might include things like background checks that are required by law. In other states, background checks just might be a good idea. I talk with groups about their codes of conduct. What can you expect of kids, of parents, of teachers? A lot of groups have some sort of statement of purpose or statement of faith that people have to agree to. And I am a church nerd. One of my favorite things is talking with group leaders about what does your statement of faith mean? What does it say about you? How can we maybe craft it to include those you want to reach and exclude those who you think would be a better fit in another group? So that's part of what we can do, but there's a lot more. So one of the things that we do is we've put together a lot of information for groups. We've got brochures that you can hand out to your people, whether it's at your kickoff meeting or your graduation or parents' night out or whatever. HSLDA has speakers where either by Zoom or in person, we can talk with groups. We go around to state conferences all over. A lot of groups need insurance policies. If you are a discount group with HSLDA, then you get a discount on your insurance. And you talked at the beginning about terminology. So discount group, I'll be using a few times throughout probably. That's a group that has contacted HSLDA and said, hey, we would like to be listed on your website. We've got about 3,000 groups around the country who are on our website. And these groups have agreed to promote HSLDA. And in exchange, any of their members who want to join HSLDA get money off their annual membership for that. We're also running a program this year in 2022 called HSLDA Group Connections. And if you as a local group or a state organization, some sort of discount group, if you send HSLDA a new member family, we send you $50 for that family. We've got a lot of practical helps, brainstorming. Like I said, I spend a lot of my time just talking with people and saying, well, here's what other people have told me, or why don't you think about this, because this group out in Oklahoma was doing this, or I talked with this group in Michigan who was having this problem that sounds similar to yours. I actually have been able to connect people. I'll say, all right, well, you've talked with me about a problem. I talked with someone else last week. How about if I send that person your contact information, then they can talk with you about the problem. And then lastly, we also have grants that are available. We give out in the tens of thousands of dollars every
Oh,
year
wow.
to homeschool groups.
Mm.
Whether, again, that's your local co-op, maybe a support group for moms. We've given grants for things like setting up a lending library, doing a better field trip, doing a great senior prom, hiring somebody to answer the phones.
Mhm.
All of those things are things we've given groups grants for. So that's some of the stuff that we do.
Wow, Darren, I had no idea. Just as a normal, ordinary homeschool mom, you don't really consider everything that goes into a group. And it sounds like that's a really valuable resource to not only guide people through the process, but to help them be aware that there even is a process, that there are
Yes.
these legal requirements and things that we just may not even know to ask the questions. So that sounds like a really great resource. And that's awesome that you guys are able to offer that.
I often tell people that I can help you in asking questions,
Yeah.
figuring out questions to ask. Sometimes I know the answers, but a lot of it is just like you said, finding out what it is that you need to think about and move forward that way.
Absolutely. And asking great questions is a great way to get great answers. So I think that's a good key starting point. Fantastic. Well, what are some examples of what are some of the kind of groups that you might be talking with?
All right. Well, I'll start maybe with big and then move down to small.
Okay.
So I often talk with state homeschool organizations like Home, whether that's talking with them about setting up policy for their conference or brainstorming with them about how to reach out to local groups or giving them advice about this problem that has come up. But often when I'm talking with a state organization, they're kind of a liaison between here's a problem at a local group or individual homeschool family, and then we can reach out from HSLDA and help that. So that's
Great.
one kind of group. Then there's your more regional organization. Now, some states have these more than others. For example, South Carolina, Texas has a number of regional organizations. Missouri and Kansas often divide up into several regions, and so I'll talk with them. And often that's again talking networking. How do you reach out? How do you make new connections with homeschoolers and homeschool groups? And what are the problems that you have to do as far as fundraising? And what are the laws in your state for registration that you have to do for fundraising? Things like that. And then there's the smaller ones, maybe, for example, sports leagues. I talk with Homeschool Sports League. I just talked with one in Virginia yesterday, and they had a question about policies of what they could and couldn't ask people who were joining. I talk with local co-ops. Some of these are just 5 families who are getting together. Others have upwards of 500 children who are getting together twice a week at a local church to have classes and do field trips. And I mean, the word co-op, that has such a broad range of meaning now. I'm not even sure it's a useful word. I just call them all homeschool groups, honestly. But then there's the kind of support group, and maybe that's like a parent get together once a month to pray for each other, or some support groups do types of things that the parents would like to do but can't. So for example, setting up field trips where you can get together in a group and get a group discount. And then let's see, what are some others? Homeschool resource centers. This is one, I think the first one I talked to was about 5 years ago, but it's become much more prevalent in 2021 and 2022 as people are coming out of the COVID restrictions and they don't necessarily want to do public school, and they might not have enough money for private school, but they have to work so they can't homeschool all the time. But what do we do now? And so a lot of my job is talking with groups about, well, what can you offer that market. And one of the types is the Homeschool Resource Center, where basically this person rents or buys a building and then sets up this area over here is a classroom that you can rent out on an hourly basis. This one over here is a computer lab where there are 7 computers set up. This one over here is our science center, and they buy some equipment that can be used. And there's like a membership fee, and you can come in and take a class here or give a class here, or just hang out and homeschool in a group setting. There are resource centers. I've talked with them in Washington, Florida, California, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas. There are a number of them that I've talked to. So those are some of the types of groups. I really like talking with creative people, and that's a fun part of my job.
Yeah, awesome. I'd never heard of the resource centers. That sounds like a really fascinating thing. And again, great resource for people to have and to get the creative juices flowing, like you're saying, another reason to connect with people, to think outside the box and to have new ideas and to look in new directions that maybe on our own we wouldn't have come up with. So that's brilliant. Awesome.
I really like the idea of those centers. For one thing, one of the co-ops that my family was involved in just before COVID was a group similar to that, where there were kind of different stations around the center where we were meeting. I would teach a class on history here, and then there was a gym. And if my son, that was what he did for co-op. He went and played in the gym the entire 3 hours. Great. That's what it was for.
Awesome. Well, we've kind of touched on creativity. Is there anything else you'd like to add on maybe what are some creative ways that groups are serving homeschoolers?
Okay, so this one's kind of fun because, again, part of the privilege of my job is I get to talk with entrepreneurs at all levels, really, and that's what a lot of them are. So some of them are your kind of basic ones of when I was homeschooled back in 1989 to 91, we were in a co-op and there were parent taught classes. The kind, again, that work better in groups, doing geography competitions, physical education class, putting on a drama production, making all the costumes and things. And I still talk with co-ops that do very much that kind of thing. One co-op that I talked to said their goal was to empower parents and homeschool families to do new creative things. And so they actually had gotten some pretty substantial funding from some of the families in the area who really wanted to support homeschooling. So their basic rule was, if you come to us with an idea of a homeschool class or activity, we will give you funding and support to start that up, kind of get it off the ground. And so that one focused a lot on the arts. Ballet class, other types of dance, art, drawings of various sort, painting classes, a lot of very creative. They had not just one drama troupe, but several drama troupes. So that's what that one was really focused on. I've talked with a couple groups that are working in partnership with businesses in their community, a ballet studio or a karate dojo that has those types of classes, and then also a homeschool component of it, where parents can drop off their kids for karate for an hour class and then come back and homeschool their kid there for another couple hours. And there's a room set up, and there's someone there whose specialty is maybe math or maybe history, who can do a side class between karate and the homeschooling or something like that. That's interesting to see. The resource centers I mentioned. One of the other interesting things that I've run across in just the last couple of years is getting several families together on a more regular basis. It's not a private school because it only runs maybe 2.5 days a week or so, but it's doing it more as a group setting. And this parent teaches math and science, and then this parent from the other class teaches history and English. And then on Fridays, then Thursdays, they kind of split apart and do their own thing. And often they encourage the families to use those days for field trips or for doing library trips and getting books for the next week. So those are some of the things that I've been seeing. A lot of it has been more doing homeschooling as groups in the last few years. And remember, I'm biased on this. The people who I talk to are the group leaders. So that's what I'm hearing about. But it's fun seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, so many creative outside the box thinking ideas and that strength in numbers. I may not be that great at science. I may not want to ever dissect anything. And then there's another parent who's passionate about it, has all the equipment, has all the tools, and says, bring it, let's have a dissecting party. That's awesome. Okay, great. Y'all go do that. Don't even tell me about it later. That's fine. Just, yeah. So I love that aspect of bringing people together and really being able to make up for each other's weaknesses and really play on the strengths. And I
Yes.
think that's teaching our children a lot as well, that you don't have to be fantastic at everything, but be really good at what you are good at.
Yes.
And be willing to share it with others.
And be willing to share it. That is an
Yeah.
important part.
Awesome. Well, what are some things that you have learned from homeschool group leaders along the years as you've been working with them?
Okay, well, one of them is what you've said a couple times, which is thinking outside of the box.
Mm.
Now, I tend to be a rule follower, a compliant. I've worked at HSLDA for 26 years now. So I'm not exactly the bouncing around, coming up with brand new ideas type thing. But one of the fun things about my job is that I get to talk with these creative people. And so I'm able to make notes of what they're doing. And then when someone else is calling, I've been able to say, okay, well, here's this that this other group has done. And part of the fun part of my job that I really enjoy is brainstorming with leaders. They call and say, I have a heart for helping the homeschoolers in my community. How do I do that? And I can talk usually for about 25 minutes about, well, here are some ideas. Do you have enough money to do a resource center? Do you have 3 families who are committed to do a co-op together? Do you have a church building that maybe wants to do a ministry to the homeschoolers in their area where every Monday they can come and get taught really excellent materials and enough stuff to take them through the next couple days at home? Again, thinking new ways of helping parents educate their kids. Now, again, remember, I'm from HSLDA, HS being the homeschool. So I talk with a lot of hybrid programs that, in my opinion, look more like private schools than homeschools, but I'm always pushing the homeschool part. Get the parents involved, keep them there. Sure, there are a whole lot of new parents who think, I can't do this. Here, you homeschool my kid for me. And I like talking with group leaders about, how about we work on mentorship and discipleship? So it's like, yes, I will be delighted to homeschool your kid for you. And you're going to sit there and watch how it's done. And I'm going to bring you under my wing. And within a couple years, that parent is now confident. And yes, I can do this with my kid. So that has been something that I've learned from talking with group leaders is there's all sorts of different ways to help homeschoolers. Look around for what the community around you needs. And by the way, that community may be a physical one, or it might be a virtual one. I talked with a leader, this was 2 weeks ago now. She runs basically an online school with a couple classes. She focuses on English and math. Those are her 2 that she does. And she is from her home with live classes teaching people in 4 different states. All of them have complied with the homeschool law of their state and submitted whatever notice it is that they need. She leaves that up to them, but she provides some of the instruction so that the parents have this structure of like, it's not all on me as a new homeschooler. I've got this help here. I think that's wonderful that she's helping that way.
Awesome. Fantastic. So what can you tell me about what you're seeing that local groups have as far as their particular needs? And how do you see that state organizations are able to come in and support and serve and help in meeting those needs?
Okay, well, let's see. One of the major things that I spend a lot of time talking with groups about is the legalities of what homeschooling means in their state.
Mm.
And that's something that the state organizations know up, down, and side to side. So for example, what is the homeschool law? What does it mean to homeschool? I want to help the homeschoolers. How much can I do that without becoming a private school or something else? And then of course, that gets blurry in like Texas and California, where homeschoolers are private schools by definition. Um, so that's one thing that the local groups often, they're the ones who are kind of on the front lines helping these new homeschoolers. But when the new homeschoolers have questions about the law, where do you send them? Well, you can send them up to the state organization. The thing that a lot of the local groups that I've talked to, that I've been seeing, that they want, well, as one leader told me, when I call the state organization, I know they have my back,
Mm.
because most of them have run groups before. I know you said you are actually serving with Home and also as a local group leader. So that's the case with a ton of state organizations. And so they've kind of been there, done that. And so they can provide that support. And again, it's similar to what I'm able to provide, on a legal perspective. The state organizations can say, oh yeah, the group 2 counties over with you was just facing this problem last year. Let me get you in touch with the leader over there. Networking is such a valuable and important thing that these state organizations can provide. I'm on the email list for a bunch of state organizations, Home being one of them. And one of the things that is great, and I've heard this from a number of local leaders that they like, is the state organizations can look at things on a statewide level and say, here is what's going on here. There's these field trips. There's this museum that's offering discounted rates. There's this service project here where homeschoolers are really needed to come help the community. There's this conference that's coming up in this corner of the state. Everyone, go there to check out curriculum. There's this scholarship that's available to all students in our state. Here's the directions for applying. That's the type of thing that local leaders, by and large, do not have the time to look up, but would be extremely valuable for them to pass on to their members and say, hey guys, did you know 3 counties over this is going on? Or there's this state scholarship that's coming up. Make sure you don't miss this deadline. So that's one thing that state organizations, obviously, they can interact with the homeschoolers as well, but a ton of homeschoolers that I talk to don't belong to their state organizations, which is kind of sad. But anyway, they do, though, often belong to a co-op or a support group or an online Facebook group or some sort of support, or taking classes online. That's where the networking can happen, so that the state can say, hey guys, pass this on to your members. And then the local groups can encourage their people, hey guys, do you remember that bill that came up last year where homeschooling was under attack? Well, guess who fought it? It was the state organization. You guys need to join them. And so it becomes this, working together. So what I'm hearing from local groups is they really like it when the state organizations do things on a statewide level, because they don't have the time and resources for it. And they really like it also when there's, whether one or a couple people at the state level whose job it is to be a liaison with the local and say, hey guys, here are these things that are going on. Is there a way that I can pray for you? Is there some support that you need? Do you have a beginning of the year meeting coming up? We've got brochures about how to comply with the homeschool law or the college opportunities. These colleges in our state are really friendly to homeschoolers. Again, that's the type of thing that they can work together on.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And something that I just want to highlight that you touched on is that the state organizations really are watchdogs in the law. They, most of them have 1 or 2 individuals or a group assigned specifically to read through all of the bills coming up in each session. And, if anyone's been watching, sometimes there are hundreds upon hundreds of bills coming through. So I, as a busy homeschool mom, working, running a business, running my household, volunteering here and there. I don't have the bandwidth for that at all. I'm like, I don't even know they're meeting, right? So knowing that our homeschool, our state homeschool organization does have people on the ground being watchful, being mindful, and then bringing that to the attention of, like you said, the local group leaders who can then disseminate that information. And then people are able to take action. Because if you don't know a bill is even being introduced against you and your way of life, then how do you know what steps to take? And, that's another great thing, is that educating people on what are the steps. Okay, there's a bill. I have no idea what that means. We're only in third grade. We haven't gotten to that part of Congress and Senates. And I'm like, I don't even know. I failed history. I slept through it. I don't understand these things. Right. So being able to say, okay, here's the law. And then here's a bill that's coming up that's going to impact that law. Here's how it will impact your freedoms to homeschool. And here's one by one action steps that you as a homeschool parent in your busy life can take that are going to have an impact. And I see that as a huge value. So I appreciate you bringing that to the table as something that state organizations offer, because I know that's something that I've definitely been appreciative of. And I've seen that on other state organizations, that there's usually a page dedicated to, here's some bills coming up and here's our stance on them. And here's some action items that you might want to take. So yeah.
I have a personal investment in that because, again, when I was being homeschooled for my last couple of years in New Hampshire, my parents were involved with the state organization. My dad was on the board, and we were trying to get the law changed at that point. And so as a homeschool student, I actually was able to go up and testify in front of the legislature about the benefits of this new bill, which was fun for me. Back then, I was far more interested in politics than I am now. But it was the same thing. At that point, there were several state organizations. They had been working on this, but they were also working to get local groups to know about it. So I can remember it being discussed at our local co-op, a couple of the parents getting together. Hey, did you know about this bill? Yes, we're going up in 3 weeks to the, when they're taking testimony on it. That's the type of thing I think could be valuable because, very few local co-op or support group leaders that I've talked to want to take a whole lot of time, explaining to their people, all the political ramifications and stuff. But passing on information from, hey guys, these are the experts. This is important. We need to take action as a community. Okay, now on to our various co-op classes. I mean, I see that as vital to the homeschool movement.
Absolutely. And again, what a valuable resource that HSLDA is providing on top of, the state homeschool organizations. So can you tell me more about just how the state and the local organizations can complement each other?
Okay. So I will talk some about Virginia because that's where I live now. We've got a couple state organizations. I'm a member of both of them. One of them, the Home Education Association of Virginia, HEAV, puts together training every year. They call it Leader Life. And it's designed for local group leaders to come in for Friday evening and through Saturday to get training on things like running a group, leadership, finding volunteers, avoiding financial problems. Some of it is you sit and listen to speakers that HEAV has brought in, or maybe it's roundtable discussions between leaders. They do a really great job at bringing in group leaders. They usually have somewhere 100 or so. I've talked at that one. I've spoken at similar ones in Iowa and Arizona and Oregon and various ones around the country, where the state organization provides a service to group leaders. One that I got to speak with in Connecticut back a couple years ago was really fascinating because they brought in a therapist who specialized in helping homeschool families with speech therapy and physical therapy for special needs students. And because Connecticut is such a small state, she had kind of a statewide practice. None of the leaders had ever heard of her. And every single one of them was sitting there thinking, oh, I know 2 families in my group who would really benefit from this. So in that way, it was, again, a statewide group doing something statewide for the local ones. Now, for the local groups, the way that I see the biggest benefit is encouraging their people. You have got to support our state organization because we don't have time to be the legislative watchdogs. And sure, HSLDA tracks all the bills and talks with the state organizations and lets people know, but we do not have the boots on the ground. That's the state organizations. And so I think one of the really important things for the local groups is encouraging their local people. You've got to contact and connect with the state organizations so that they have the resources to hire a lobbyist, get people there to talk about it, hire someone to send out the emails analyzing what all this stuff is done. It takes money, it takes time, and maybe it sounds a little mercenary, but that's the way things work. You've got to have somebody who's paid to actually do the work because volunteers only go so far. So that's one of the ways. The other thing that I think, and again, remember, my bias is I talk with groups all the time. I think the homeschool community is strongest when homeschool families are in homeschool groups. And I think that's whether it's at a local level, state level, both is optimal. I mean, I always encourage people you should join HSLDA too. So I guess that's a national level. But one of the important things that I found as a homeschool dad is going to state conferences because, and so I think that's one where, how does the state organization serve the local groups? Well, it's by putting on this conference that the local groups don't have time and resources to do. How do the local ones support the state? Encourage their members, you have got to go to this. And, maybe the local group leaders are the ones doing some of the workshops. I love coming to conferences. I love standing up in front of people and speaking. Maybe you can tell I have no problem with this. But it's fun for me, but I only have certain specialties. I mean, I can talk about how dads are involved in homeschooling because my wife and I have co-taught for 9 years now or so. Or I can talk about the laws or the history of homeschooling or group issues. But when it comes to how do you choose a math curriculum for a special needs student, I have no clue. But there will be someone at that conference who's got a workshop on that. And so that's one thing, is encouraging people, go to a conference, whether it's one put on by your state organization, whether there are some regional conferences that people can go to. Encourage people, think of yourselves as part of a bigger community. You are not just homeschooling on your own. Although, yes, you have the freedom to homeschool on your own, and yay for that. But we are part of a community. And so, part of being community is doing community stuff together. And it's really beneficial to go to these conferences. I'll put in a plug for Virginia. If people are watching from that area, the Virginia conference, I've been to it a number of years as a presenter, as a homeschool dad going to find curriculum. We've participated in their graduation ceremony for 2 of my kids who've graduated so far. But last year, we did a great fun thing as a family. My family and I rented one of the tables in the exhibit hall, and we brought our family's favorite board games. And it was just, hey guys, as you go around and look at curriculum, you need an hour to just chill out and relax while you're here, come play a board game. So we taught people how to play Settlers of Catan and Celestia and Terraforming Mars and Marrying Mr. Darcy, which is a really cool card game based on Pride and Prejudice. And it was fun. We got to meet so many cool homeschoolers, and a lot of them really liked it. If you just sit at home homeschooling on your own, you don't get the fun of playing board games with other homeschoolers. So I guess there's my plug.
Yeah, community, absolutely. And I, on a personal level, I can still relate to that. We moved to Maine from Texas in 2015 in the summer, and that happened to be when we started homeschooling. We started road schooling with our road trip here to Maine. And our son was 5 at the time. And I had already plugged in 2 homeschoolers in Maine before even moving here, as I was investigating, is homeschooling doable in Maine? What are the laws? Is this something that we really want to do? And so we plugged in right away, and we attended the conference the first time that it was offered once we were in Maine. And it was life changing. And it absolutely has been the lifeblood. I think that had I not been there, I'm not sure we would have survived homeschooling. And I might have had to be locked up from a mental breakdown. I don't know. But just the little tiny nuggets, the one liners that have become ingrained in my brain as, oh, I don't have to stick with a curriculum that's not working. I can throw it away. Oh, if my kid and I are both crying about school, probably time to change gears, right? And that's okay. The unschooling my brain, I was a public school kid. So letting go of it has to look this way and this regimented, and I'm a type A personality and give me my checkbox and it's all got to be perfect in a list and it's done. And I learned, oh, public schools only complete about 80% of any curriculum. So no, you don't have to check it all off. And oh, there's this thing called unschooling. And no, you don't have to sit up books for 7 hours a day in order to accomplish school. So little things like this that I wouldn't, like we had said earlier, I wouldn't have even known what questions to be asking or what worlds to be exploring had I not come and seen the variety of other parents, other homeschool approaches, what people are doing, just getting my horizons broadened, that creative, that outside the box. My box is very known to me. Outside of that, I don't even know what's there. So coming to convention, meeting other parents, exploring the booths, and getting to hold physical curriculum in our hands and have my son say, oh, I would never do that, mom. Don't waste your money because I won't do it. He's very strong in letting me know. And those are valuable resources. And then, continuingly, we have regional reps here in Maine that serve, like you said, the smaller areas.
Yes.
And being able to connect and just have a lifeline, have someone that you can call up on the phone and say, man, I feel like the worst homeschool mom ever. I'm pretty sure I'm getting everything wrong. And to have someone on the other end of the phone helping you to see how awesome your kid is, how great you are as a parent, how it actually is working, even when it may not look like, can just be really phenomenal. So yeah, without that, it boggles my mind how people don't connect in. And with the state homeschool organization or local ones, because yes, you can do it alone, but why would you? There's
Right.
so much more available in coming together. So I really appreciate you bringing that in. So, another question for you, we've kind of talked around this, but how would you say that both the state and local organizations benefit when the group leaders connect to reach out to their state organizations such as Home?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the benefit to these state organizations. I've talked with a number of state leaders who described to me how encouraging it is to talk with local group leaders and just find out what homeschooling is looking like on the ground. Again, especially in some of the larger states, the state organizations have to keep track of things on a state level. They are often a lot of them are really focused on legislation, what's going on politically. And so it's good for them to be able to hear from local leaders, hey, here's the kinds of homeschooling questions that we're getting nowadays. And of course, some of those will be percolating up to the state. But I've heard from a lot of state leaders, they like hearing from the local group leaders about, here are the issues, here are the questions, here's the things that we need, can you help with this? So it's for the benefit of the state organization, it's that they get to hear what's going on the ground. How it benefits, I think, the local ones is, well, first of all, let's say community. I will use an example from my church. Remember, I said I'm a church nerd. I belong to a hierarchical church. We just had an election for the bishop of our diocese recently, and it was described that the bishop is basically the pastor to the pastors. Well, in some way, the homeschool state organization is the leader for the group leaders, or at least can fulfill that function. And I talked with a bunch of group leaders who, that's why they call the state organization. It's because I am having a problem with my group. I need to talk to somebody who's got my back, who's got some experience, who can give me some good advice. I need that. And you can contact other group leaders, but some of them are still right in the midst of the same things. That can be a real benefit of I contact the state and yeah, there's someone there who has gone through this problem with me, or maybe knows a lawyer who they can recommend to me, or a resource that I could look up, or maybe we've been using software that is just plain not working for our group. Well, the state organizations can say, okay, well, I've talked with several groups about this, and it appears that now this one's becoming more popular. That's the type of thing that can be really valuable in the whole networking thing. And it often, at least from my experience, it can work to do kind of a horizontal network where the groups network among each other, but it often takes someone to start the network. And that's something the state organizations can be so good at because they know some of the people and then can spread out and grow those networks so that you're now talking with people. And whether it's like HEAV doing the leader life, or Homeschool New York every year has a big fall session for their chapter leaders around the state, or Indiana or California have special tracks at their conference for the local group leaders to come and talk about group leader stuff rather than the how do I choose math curriculum for my kid or something like that. Though the state organization gets a huge benefit from talking with and communicating with the local ones because they find out more what's on the ground, and the local groups get the benefit of we've got a broader network and a broader community, and I don't have to focus on just what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Getting more of that bird's eye view. And I love that visual of there might be someone in the county, just one or two counties over, that if the two of you connected, this whole thing could flourish. And maybe you're even looking for someone like that, but you just don't know they're there. And then maybe the state organization does. I think that's brilliant. Absolutely. The strength in numbers again, right?
Yes.
Community and creativity seem to be
Absolutely.
some running themes here. Well, how do you see that these relationships between the state and the local organizations, how are these serving to strengthen and protect homeschool freedoms?
All right. So HSLDA, of course, is big on protecting homeschool freedom. So this is why I'm passionate about this. When I was being homeschooled my first year, New Hampshire was still an approval state. We had to ask permission from the school board to homeschool. And in fact, mom and dad got denied the first time they asked. They had to come back with a much more expansive plan and humbly resubmit it for permission. I don't want to go back to those days. I like the freedom that we have nowadays, even if it is Virginia, which is a more moderate state where, yes, we do have to do a notice of intent, but I don't have to ask permission. I just tell them I'm going to homeschool. So with that behind me, how does this help? Well, first of all, if the state organization is strong enough that it can monitor the legislation and actually has the resources and the money and the time to go do that, that is step one, because that's kind of like the tripwire of legislation is coming up. Now we can sound a warning. But most state organizations that I've talked to have a limited connection with the homeschoolers in their state, because only a certain percentage of them are going to join HSLDA. And so they'll find out about it. And only a certain percentage of them are going to join these state organizations. So they'll find out about it. But most homeschoolers that I've talked to are in some sort of homeschool community. And so if the state and the communities can work together, then a whole bunch of homeschoolers find out about this thing that is happening. And that's when we can act together to protect homeschool freedom. If you have people just acting on their own, especially with the internet nowadays, yes, some people will find out about it and be able to take action. But if you have a network that is already strong and already works, you don't have to build it on January 27th when this horrible bill gets introduced.
Got it. Yeah, brilliant. Another thing that I see that just kind of came up as you were speaking, as far as like the state organizations not necessarily having those local connections, is that local people know their local representatives. So maybe you're best friends with, the House of Representatives person, or maybe, they live down your block, or you go to church with them, or, you see them while you're out fishing. So I think that educating homeschoolers individually as far as these bills and as far as the need to protect the rights, and just showing them that there are these different avenues, and that reaching out and forming those relationships with the local lawmakers and legislators can make a huge difference. So by using the state organization to equip the regional and local organizations to equip the people, then the people can go and have those intelligent conversations with the people who are building the laws, because the lawmakers might think that they're doing something as a gift to the homeschoolers, and the homeschoolers say, wait, no, we actually didn't want that. And that goes against everything that we need. We see a lot of this with the school choice and funding and things like that. It looks like, oh yes, let's give homeschoolers free money. Well, we all know with government money comes government control. So let's get that message out. Let's educate the legislators that yes, you think you're doing us a gift, you're giving us free money, thank you, but here's all the reasons why that's actually not wanted, and we're going to fight against that. So please don't try to pass that bill.
And that's one thing where, yes, educating the legislators is so important. Also educating the homeschool community. And that's one thing, again, where state organizations can provide materials to local groups, because the local groups don't have time to answer all these questions. But the state organizations, this is to some extent their lifeblood. And so, with issues like that maybe on the surface don't look so bad or look good, or other issues that come up that are specific to your state on why this is good or why this is bad, that's the type of thing that a state organization can do, a good snappy postcard or trifold or graphic to put on the group's website, and then send it out and say, hey guys, please distribute this to your people, and then you don't have to answer questions about it, just send them on to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that partnership that you're pointing to there. Well, as we wrap up, Darren, are there any other closing thoughts or anything else that you'd like to add in?
Well, I guess three things. One, for just the standard homeschool family, when I came here to work at HSLDA in the mid-90s, my boss said a number of times, there's no such thing as a Lone Ranger homeschooler. We should all be doing this in some sort of community. And I took that on as my own challenge. That's one of the things that I love doing of working with groups, is strengthen groups so they can help homeschool families. To the local organizations, I talk with so many of them, and I encourage them, reach out to your state organizations, tell them what you need, and they can be a real support for you, especially in the legislative and kind of statewide picture. And then for the state organizations, reach out to your local groups and don't see them as competition, because they aren't. You guys were working together in partnership to protect homeschool freedom.
Absolutely. Strength and unity.
Yes.
Definitely. All right. Well, Darren, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate the wisdom and the resources that you've brought. I know this has been valuable to me personally as a homeschool group leader, and I hope it's going to have a huge impact for others as well. And just as we close, to everyone watching today, we would sincerely invite you to join your state homeschool organization. And if you are here in Maine, Homeschoolers of Maine welcomes you. We have a website, and just on that very front page, go down to the bottom, scroll down, stick in your email address, and you'll be on our email newsletter list. We're not going to spam you, but we are going to help keep you educated. As Darren said, what's going on? How can I connect? What's coming up in the legislature that in the legislative sessions that I might need to be taking note of? What are the field trips? What are some educational opportunities, scholarships? We're going to be disseminating that information to you and getting you connected in. Also on the Homeschoolers of Maine website, everything you need to know about connecting with your regional representatives and with a lot of other information. So please do support Homeschoolers of Maine. We need your help. Like Darren said, there are expenses, and the more support that we do have, the more that we are able to offer. And also join HSLDA. As I say that personally, as a homeschool mom, at our first convention, when we saw the homeschool Legal Defense Association booth, we signed right up because we saw that the peace of mind that comes from that, from knowing if someone ever comes knocking on our door, truancy officers or anybody else with odd questions, to know that, hey, I've got people in my back. I don't have to go try to find an attorney or try to find answers or try to field this on my own because I would be completely incompetent. So knowing that I've got in my back pocket a person that's going to fight for me, knowing that there's a website full of resources. And if you haven't been to it yet, the HSLDA website is amazing. So many teaching tools, so many free resources, as well as classes and things for your kids to take. So love that. And as a supporter of Homeschoolers of Maine, we actually have a discount code with HSLDA. And all of that's right on our website, Homeschoolers of Maine. If you need help with anything, just reach out to your regional rep, or there's just a contact button right there on the website. So Darren, thank you so much again for your time. And we just appreciate everyone for tuning in today. And we know that you're here because you do have a heart for homeschooling. You have a heart for leadership. You have been touched and served with a purpose. And we hope this equips you to go out and serve others well. God bless. Today, you heard Darren speak about the importance of homeschool leaders everywhere connecting with their state organization and partnering to better serve homeschoolers across the state. We would love to invite you to join us at a leadership retreat for homeschool leaders. This will be called the 2023 Homeschool Leader Connect. It'll be February 3rd and 4th, 2023 at the beautiful Samoset Resort in Rockport, Maine. We believe that strong leaders are stronger together. So come, sign up, join the crowd. This is for people who are already leading homeschool groups, co-ops, other partnerships, as well as people who maybe are interested. Maybe you have a void in your area of leadership and you're being called, or maybe there's already strong leadership and you want to come up alongside them and support and offer even more resources to homeschoolers. This is for you. This event will be full of inspiring and encouraging practical how-to tips on the court for how to lead better, both leading yourself, leading your family, and leading your community. So we hope you'll join us. Check out the Homeschoolers of Maine website for all the details and reserve your spot today.